Hey guys, tonight we're slipping off our sandals and stepping into one of the most aromatic experiences the ancient world had to offer, Roman bathhouses. Imagine steam rising from warm pools, the distant murmur of gossip in Latin, and the unmistakable scent of centuries-old body odor. Yes, you're about to experience all of it firsthand, because tonight you are the one walking into the baths. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've never seen a building like this before. The bathhouse looms ahead, half palace, half public pool, with stone columns bathed in orange light as the sun dips below the horizon. The air outside is already thick with the mingled aromas of baked stone, street food, and, let's be honest, sweaty people who haven't discovered soap as we know it. You tighten your toga, which you'll be shedding soon, and take your first step into a world of heat, moisture, and communal cleansing. You're not alone. Roman bathhouses are like the mall, the gym, the spa, and the therapist's office all rolled into one. Everyone goes, from aging senators to gladiators with one good eye. There's a buzz of conversation in the atrium, old men complaining about taxes, teenagers daring each other to jump into the cold pool, and that one guy loudly explaining how vinegar cures everything. The attendant greets you with a nod and a hand extended for your entrance fee. It's cheap, especially for what you're about to experience. You hand over a few coins and follow the crowd into the apoditarium, the changing room. It smells like old wood, wet linen, and ambition. Your first whiff of bathhouse air hits you like a historical punch to the nostrils. It's warm, dense, and seasoned with centuries of steam. The walls are sweating just as much as the patrons. Somewhere, someone is applying a suspicious amount of olive oil to their chest. You wonder if you brought enough. Historians agree that bathhouses were a central part of Roman daily life, but they still debate how accessible they really were to enslaved people and women, or how clean they actually felt once you got past the marble facades. What we do know is that these buildings were designed not just for bathing, but for socializing. And judging by the echoing laughter, political whispers, and slightly musical belches bouncing off the walls, that part is in full swing. A young man bumps into you carrying a jar of scented oil. The jar leaks. Your feet are now slightly oily. It's fine. You tell yourself this is all part of the experience. Another man walks by absolutely drenched in some kind of cheap perfume that smells like expired honey. You catch yourself making a face and quickly wipe it off. Judging by the judging looks you're getting, you're the new one here. You step aside and try not to stare as a strigil, a kind of curved metal scraper, is used by a very serious-looking man on his friend's back. Scrape, flick, wipe. The gunk lands on the floor. Nobody cleans it. You try not to think about that too hard. You take a moment to breathe, which is a mistake. The air is a kaleidoscope of smells, sweet oils, burning incense, damp stone, and whatever that guy had for lunch. You catch a whiff of what you hope is roasted chestnut. You turn, hoping to find the source, and are instead greeted by someone toweling their armpits with aggressive enthusiasm. The towel is communal. You make a mental note not to use it. It's sensory overload. but somehow calming. There's a rhythm to the chaos, a slow pulse that matches your own breath. You feel yourself adjusting. The heat helps. So does the realization that nobody really cares what you look like. This is Rome. Everyone's a little grimy, and nobody's wearing underwear. You lean against a warm wall and take it all in. The soft slapping of wet feet on tile, the hiss of steam from a nearby vent, the glug-glug of wine being poured way too early in the evening. The building seems to breathe with you. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. You're starting to get it. And yet, under all that steam and chatter, there's an undeniable, persistent funk. It clings to the corners. It settles in the fabric of the walls. No amount of imported perfume can fully mask it. And somehow, that's comforting. Like an old coat that's been through a lot and still fits just right. You haven't even touched the water yet, and already the experience is seeping into your skin. The good, the weird, and the mildly unpleasant. It's all part of the bathhouse spell. You're in it now. You're barefoot now, because sandals don't belong past the changing room. The floor is slightly slippery, a blend of water, old oil, and the ghosts of hygiene routines past. Your feet squelch forward as you shuffle into the next room, the tepidarium, the warm room. It's like the lobby of this steamy labyrinth, a place to get your pores halfway convinced that something good is about to happen. But before we get to the heat, let's talk about what's really in the air here. Oil. Not essential oil, not eucalyptus spa mist. We're talking olive oil, the stuff you probably have in your kitchen. That's the base of Roman hygiene. They don't use soap. Instead, they smear oil all over their bodies and then scrape it off with those delightful strigils you saw earlier. The result? A semi-cleansed, slightly lubricated version of clean. You're already starting to glisten. A man next to you, mid-40s, suspiciously confident, offers you a small jar. He nods at you, gestures to your arm, and says something that might mean, go ahead. You dip your fingers in. The oil is thick and fragrant, with undertones of thyme and maybe goat. You rub it onto your skin, trying not to look like a first-timer. You fail. There's an art to applying oil in here, a subtle choreography of knowing where to reach and where not to. It's communal, yes, but also kind of intimate. The man grunts approvingly and moves on. Apparently, you've passed your first test. Around you, others are at various stages of the process. Some are gleaming like statues, others are mid-scrape, and a few have just given up and are lying flat on heated stone benches, arms akimbo, looking like boiled noodles. The air is moist, very moist. You've never really thought about the word clammy until now. You get it. There's no privacy, and no one wants it. You make your way through, trying not to step on any toes or, worse, any used strigils on the ground. Everything smells vaguely of sweat and rosemary. The rosemary's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Now, take a deep breath. You can taste the air, can't you? A little salty, a little herbal, and distinctly people-y. It's like licking the inside of a gym bag that's been seasoned with oregano. But again, you're adjusting. You're becoming part of the stew. A group of older women laughs uproariously at something in the corner. You can't quite understand their Latin, but you're pretty sure it involves someone slipping on the slick tiles last week. Laughter echoes through the chamber like gentle thunder. Another man is singing off-key to no one in particular. It's oddly charming. Historically speaking, this kind of social bathing was serious business. Roman citizens took it as a right, almost a civic duty. Emperors funded the construction of grand bath complexes to gain public favor. Some historians suggest these places functioned like miniature cities, with their own social codes, hierarchies, even scandals. But how much of that was political theater versus hygiene remains up for debate. What's not debatable is the smell. It clings, it evolves. There's a top note of sweat, a middle of oil, and a lingering base of old moisture and tile grout. And then there are the people, hundreds of them daily, bringing their own aromas, their own foot fungus, and their own hopes for purification. Speaking of feet, you suddenly notice them. Not yours, other people's. There are a lot of feet, and they're all around. Some cracked, some calloused, some strangely well-groomed. The Romans, to their credit, were big on pedicures, just not as big on, ventilation. You shuffle closer to the next chamber, led by a slow-moving flow of half-naked bodies. The walls here are sweating more than the people. Moisture drips from the ceilings like the place is crying gently. You don't blame it. Then you spot it. The stone threshold of the caldarium, the hot room. From here, you can see the steam rising like a curtain. But that's for later. First, you find a corner bench, warm but not scalding, and sit. The stone hugs your body, surprisingly comforting, despite being, stone. You lean back. You inhale. You exist. The guy next to you coughs. It's wet. He apologizes in Latin. You nod politely. Then he spits something into a small bowl and keeps talking to his friend about chariot races. Charming. And yet, there's something about this room, something grounding. You're surrounded by strangers, all of you emitting different versions of body heat, all existing in this humid, aromatic ecosystem together. No phones, no clothes, just humans, slowly stewing in their own uniqueness. And just when you think you've identified every smell in the room, a new one wafts in. It's sharper, almost vinegary. You trace it to a young man rubbing garlic oil into his shoulders like it's sunscreen. Apparently, this is normal. Garlic was believed to open the pores and ward off illness, or maybe vampires. You decide not to sit too close. The sounds are starting to blend into a background lullaby. Murmurs, splashes, a distant cough, a laugh. Another striggle scraping someone's back with the enthusiasm of a sculptor. It's oddly soothing, like listening to a city breathe. And as you close your eyes for a moment, you realize something. You no longer notice the smell. You are the smell. Congratulations! You've officially blended in. You stand again, a bit dizzy now from the humidity and the novelty of having shared so much air and moisture with so many semi-oiled strangers. The door to the caldarium beckons you forward with its fogged-over archway, radiating heat like the open mouth of a sleepy volcano. You step through, and instantly your nostrils curl. Not in protest, just surprise. This is not just hot. This is Roman hot. A thick, almost arrogant wave of heat that wraps itself around your lungs and asks, "You sure you want this?" You do, or you think you do. It's too late now anyway. Your skin reacts instantly, breaking out into what can only be described as enthusiastic sweat. The caldarium is the heart of the operation, and you've reached the core. Here, the air is so humid it's almost a soup. And the scent. Oh, the scent. If the tepidarium was a salad dressing, this is a full stew. The steam carries with it a cocktail of aromas: lingering olive oil, a bit of mildew from the stone walls, and a tang of minerals from the heated water pools lining the far end. Someone nearby drops a bundle of crushed herbs, maybe bay leaves or fennel, into the water, and the scent flares upward like incense. You breathe it in, trying not to cough. To your left, a man is laying on the marble slab at the room's center, completely motionless except for the occasional twitch. Someone is gently pouring hot water over his legs from a bronze vessel, almost ritualistically. You wonder if he's a senator or just very good at pretending to be dead. The marble under your feet is so hot, you keep shifting your weight like a cat on a summer sidewalk. A slave, yes, the Romans unfortunately brought servants even to their bath routines, scurries past carrying a bucket of steaming water, muttering to himself about the temperature. It appears there's no thermostat here, just instinct and occasional burns. The Romans heated this room using a system called the hypocaust, essentially an underfloor furnace that channels hot air beneath the stone. Think radiant floor heating, but powered by slaves shoveling wood into a roaring fire all day long. Cozy. You ease into a stone bench near one of the pools, cautiously dipping your fingers in. It's hot, but not scalding. You slide in up to your waist, and the sensation is glorious, like being inside a teacup that's somehow judging your modern discomfort. As your body adjusts, so does your awareness of scent. The hot water has a different smell here, less like oil, more like metal and old stone. The walls themselves seem to exude years of use, as if generations of bathers have left their essence soaked into the tiles, which they probably have. Next to you, a young woman with impossibly perfect hair is scrubbing her feet with something that looks like a clamshell. You make a mental note never to touch your face again without a full post-bath ritual. She smiles politely and returns to her task. Historically, this is where Romans would come to open their pores, sweat out the sins of overeating, and maybe have a philosophical chat or two. Some inscriptions even suggest that deals were made here: political, financial, romantic. Because what better place to negotiate than in a room full of glistening people gently poaching? One ancient account describes the air in the caldarium as thick enough to slice, and standing here you don't doubt it. Another, by the ever-cheerful Seneca, complained about the loud grunts and shouts of men in the bath, calling it an assault on the ears. Clearly, he wasn't here for the vibe. A nearby group begins singing softly, some ancient drinking song, or maybe a hymn to Bacchus. Either way, the echo is lovely. The heat amplifies every sound, making it feel like you're inside a bronze bell half filled with fog. Then another scent, something sharp, almost spicy. You look around. Someone's broken open a small jar of myrrh, adding it to their oil before scraping it off with a flourish. The smell cuts through the steam like a fragrant dagger. Not unpleasant, just surprising, like finding cinnamon in your lasagna. You start to feel a little lightheaded, which is apparently part of the fun. A man across from you nods sagely and mutters something about cleansing the humors. You nod back, pretending to understand. Then you decide it's time for a quick escape before your humors decide to revolt. You rise slowly, every inch of skin tingling. The marble is somehow even hotter now. You shuffle toward the exit, trying not to look like someone who's about to pass out. As you leave the caldarium, the air outside feels cool, even though it's still the same heavy, perfumed soup of the tepidarium. Everything is relative now. You've recalibrated. And just as you're catching your breath, a boy, not more than 12, runs past you with a bucket of rose water, sloshing it in all directions like a pint-sized Poseidon. Some splashes land on your shoulder. You smell like a salad again. This is your life now. The next room waits, cooler, drier, quieter. You've made it to the frigidarium, and it greets you with a sharp inhale. Not metaphorically, you actually inhale sharply. The cold air hits your face like a curtain pulled back in winter, and after the soupy furnace of the caldarium, it feels almost offensive. The Romans weren't messing around with temperature contrast. Here, you're supposed to seal your skin, to close the pores and trap the oils and fragrances like some kind of human marinated meatball. It's science, ancient, slightly dubious science, but they believed it with the kind of confidence that only men in togas can pull off. The pool in the center of the frigidarium glistens like a slab of polished obsidian. It's not big, but it is dramatic. People are moving into it with the same energy you might expect from penguins hesitating on an ice shelf. One brave soul dives straight in and resurfaces with a gasp that echoes off the stone. You consider your options. You inch forward and sit at the edge, dangling your feet in first. It's like plunging your toes into a bowl of seasoned glacier water. Your body protests, and your brain suddenly has a lot of opinions. But you stay, because that's what Romans did. And now, thanks to a YouTube algorithm and poor bedtime decisions, you are a Roman too. The air in the frigidarium smells different, clean, a little sour even. The walls are less pungent here, the humidity stripped away, and with it, most of the funk. Instead, there's a faint scent of iron from the cold water and something chalky from the limestone. If the caldarium smelled like ambition and body oil, this room smells like old discipline. You finally slide in, slowly. The water bites you, politely but firmly. Your skin tightens instantly, and you feel like a peeled grape that just got thrown into the Arctic. But soon, strangely, it feels good, invigorating even. You begin to understand why Roman generals like to finish their bathing rituals here. It made them feel like they'd survived something. And to be fair, they had. There's less chatter in this room. It's hard to talk when your teeth are vibrating. Most bathers sit in silence, eyes half closed, looking like statues that somehow got too cold to finish posing. Across the pool, a woman gently wrings out her hair, the water pooling around her in small, icy rivulets. She looks completely at peace. Or frozen, hard to tell. Interestingly, Roman doctors swore by the health benefits of cold plunges. They believed it could balance the body's humors, yes, those again, and shock illness away. Some even use the cold pools to treat fevers, which seems questionable, but who are we to argue with medical advice from 2,000 years ago given by a man who thought garlic cured everything? Historians still debate whether the frigidarium was used daily or reserved for the most devout bathers. Some suggest it was a test of discipline, while others claim it was just a fancy excuse to show off endurance. Either way, you're here now. Your limbs have gone numb. You are very, very Roman. At the edge of the room, a servant ladles water into bronze basins, then pours it gently over the heads of waiting bathers. You try not to flinch when it's your turn, but your soul leaves your body for a moment anyway. It's fine, totally normal. Definitely not the kind of thing you'll cry about later under a weighted blanket. To your surprise, someone begins telling a story. His voice echoes softly against the vaulted ceiling as he recounts a tale about a bathhouse mishap involving a senator, an eel, and a slippery misstep. The story is half whispered, half giggled, and utterly ridiculous, but it feels right here, surrounded by freezing strangers wrapped in tradition and damp linen. There's no oil in this room, no perfumes being slathered on. The smell of the frigidarium is cleaner, almost sterile, more aqueduct than apothecary. And while it lacks the opulence of the caldarium, it makes up for it in clarity. It clears your head, resets your body, and possibly restarts your heart. You step out slowly, shivering but proud. Your skin has taken on that Roman post-bath glow, part health, part mild trauma. A nearby bathhouse attendant hands you a rough cloth. No plush towels here, just woven linen that exfoliates with all the tenderness of a bread grater. You dry off with dignity. As you prepare to move on, the final layer of scent hits you. Someone has lit a cone of pine resin near the archway. The smoky, crisp smell curls through the air, mingling with the limestone and chill. It smells like forest fire and mountain air and a vaguely alarming camping memory from your childhood. You wrap yourself in your towel, hair dripping, skin tingling, and realize something strange. You feel really good, like you've survived a strange ritual meant to bond you with your ancestors and possibly freeze your spleen. You are now officially clean by Roman standards, which means, paradoxically, that you are absolutely covered in oil, herbs, smoke, and possibly eel residue. But that's fine, that's the deal here. You nod politely to a passing bather and begin your walk toward the next room, feet slapping lightly on the marble, leaving ghostly little footprints behind. You pass through another archway, this one lower, older, its stone visibly worn from the passage of countless damp feet before yours. The scent hits you before the sound this time. You've reached the apoditarium, the changing room. But calling it that feels a bit like calling the Colosseum a sports venue. It's more than a place to get dressed. It's where everything starts and ends. The smell here is different. Not bad, not good, just complicated. Sweat dried on linen, damp leather sandals, a faint lingering tang of brass fittings and beeswax polish. The floor is cluttered with discarded togas, fresh tunics, and the occasional pile of suspiciously forgotten undergarments. It smells like a teenage locker room if the teenagers had access to frankincense. You settle onto a low stone bench, your linen wrap clinging in all the wrong places. Around you, other bathers chat and stretch and argue mildly about theater tickets. There's an easy intimacy here. Everyone's slightly damp, slightly sleepy, and fully aware that their dignity has been checked along with their jewelry. Speaking of jewelry, a young boy in a green sash, one of the capsari, or locker room attendants, wanders past with a basket full of keys. He gives you a look that seems to say, "Don't lose your stuff. We're not responsible if your wax tablet goes missing." You nod, even though you don't actually have anything valuable, except maybe your sense of time and self, both of which feel pleasantly fuzzy now. The capsari were an essential part of the Roman bathhouse machine. They guarded personal belongings while bathers immersed themselves in oil, water, and mild gossip. Of course, they were also occasionally bribed to misplace a rival's sandals or swap a senator's tunic with a hilariously undersized version. Human nature, eternal as ever. There's a niche in the wall filled with toiletries. curved bronze strigils, chunks of pumice, bits of cloth soaked in vinegar. Someone nearby rubs their arms with a rough sponge that looks more like a medieval weapon than a grooming tool. You wonder, briefly, how anyone came out of this with skin left. On the opposite bench, a pair of older men debate the merits of warm wine before noon. One of them gestures animatedly with a sandal, sending droplets flying. The other one is clearly winning the argument by sheer volume. You don't understand the specifics, but you enjoy the rhythm of it, like listening to rain on a tiled roof. It's in this room that you start to become aware of the bathhouse as a full sensory organism. The hot and cold rooms were visceral, elemental, fire and water. But here, in the apoditarium, you feel the social heartbeat, the laughter, the tiny squabbles, the casual arrogance of men comparing elbow scars. This is where reputations are made and lost, sometimes over who has the fancier embroidered hem. Historians still argue about how democratic Roman bathhouses really were. Some claim they were great equalizers, places where rich and poor could mingle in nothing but towels. Others point to the VIP rooms, the separate entrances, the existence of private baths for the elite. The truth, as usual, probably lies somewhere between idealism and the harsh reality of who gets access to the eucalyptus oil. A man passes by you reeking of myrrh. Not a dab either. He's drenched in it. Your eyes water slightly. He's probably a merchant. Or maybe just someone who misunderstood the concept of a few drops. It's impossible to tell in this room where everyone is half naked and half someone else. You lean back against the cool stone, which smells faintly of moss and salt. Someone has carved a tiny dog into the wall near your shoulder. It's not very good, more like a lumpy goat, but it makes you smile. Graffiti in bathhouses was common, a sort of ancient bathroom Twitter, except instead of hot takes, you got declarations of love, amateur poetry, and the occasional anatomically exaggerated doodle. Suddenly, a trumpet echoes faintly from outside. Not an emergency, just a reminder that the afternoon games are about to begin at the arena. A few people stir, considering their next move. You decide to stay a little longer. You're not quite ready to give up the smell of cedar oil, burnt resin, and damp humanity. The bathhouse is starting to quiet down now. The noon rush has passed, and the air is less crowded. A servant sweeps up bits of pumice and hair, humming a tune that sounds older than the stone under your feet. The scent of dust rises, briefly, like a sigh. You reach into a basket for a dry cloth and begin patting your skin. Not rubbing, no, that would be far too aggressive after what you've been through. You dab. You sponge. You mop yourself with the reverence of a monk cleaning relics. Someone next to you whispers a joke about a general who fell asleep in the caldarium and woke up 3 shades redder than usual. You chuckle politely. It's probably true. That seems like the kind of thing that happens here. The last scent you notice in the apodarium is surprising. Lavender. Faint, yes, but unmistakable. A dried bundle tucked into a crack in the wall, maybe, or woven into someone's belt cord. It's a small grace note, a calming exhale at the end of a ritual that was somehow both luxurious and absurd. You gather your things, what little you had, and rise slowly. Your joints a bit looser, your skin a bit oilier, your mind a little foggy in the nicest possible way. You don't know if you're cleaner than you were an hour ago, but you're definitely somethinger. And with that, you slip through the next archway. You walk into a corridor that smells like patience. Not the herbal kind, the emotional one. It's quiet here, and the air is cool again. You can hear the distant gurgle of water, like someone whispering into a bowl. This is the Frigidarium, and despite the name, it's not a punishment. It's a reset button for your body. Or at least that's what the regulars keep saying through chattering teeth. The scent here is a relief after the sensory assault of the Apidarium. You inhale and get stone, wet plaster. Maybe the ghost of someone's aftershave, long washed away. The chill brings everything into sharper focus. Even the marble benches seem to judge your pores. You're not alone. A few other bathers sit at the edge of the cold plunge pool, legs dangling like curious toddlers testing the ocean. One woman with impressively braided hair has already gone in. She's floating, eyes closed, mouth twitching like she's trying to remember a song. You lower yourself in, slowly, with the kind of care normally reserved for fragile antiques and disappointing soup. The cold clutches your skin first, then works its way inward like gossip. Your breath leaves you in a hiss that might be a curse or a question, or both. This is what Roman refreshment feels like. Contrary to what you might expect, the Frigidarium doesn't smell sterile. It smells ancient. There's a mineral note in the water, as though you've just licked a coin from 300 BC. The floor is lined with stone mosaics, slick and sea-colored. Somewhere, incense has left a trace of itself, like perfume on a scarf that's been folded for years. You focus on the sounds. A foot slips, splash. A yawn. The echo of someone far off dropping a strigil on the floor. And underneath it all, the quiet hum of the bathhouse breathing through its pipes and flues. Roman engineers were obsessive about water. The entire bathhouse is a monument to hydraulic anxiety. The aqueducts carried water from miles away, sometimes uphill, through feats of engineering that modern plumbing would call a bit much. But the result? Pools that refill themselves, drains that whisper instead of gurgle, and most remarkably, floors that rarely flood. Unless, of course, there's a goat involved. It happens. You glance up. The ceiling is domed and painted with stars. Some have chipped, leaving white plaster moons. It's oddly comforting, like the sky is flaking a little, but still trying. Beside you, someone sneezes into a towel. Not the most Roman moment, but it reminds you that even emperors had to deal with allergies. Historians still debate whether cold plunges were actually healthy, or just a form of communal hazing disguised as wellness. Pliny the Elder swore by them. Galen, the physician, thought they were fine as long as you didn't have a wet temperament, whatever that meant. You linger at the edge of the pool, fingers tracing the water's surface. The cold has worked its magic. Your skin is tingling, your mind sharper, maybe even too sharp. You start to notice details again, like how the Frigidarium floor has tiny shell fragments in it, or how someone scratched the Latin equivalent of Marcus was here behind a pillar. There's something theatrical about this room. It's the stage whisper at the end of the opera, the gentle prod that says, "Time to rejoin the living." But not yet. You lean back against the lip of the pool and let your body adjust to the cold like dough settling into a mold. One of the Capsitari walks in with a towel over his head like a shawl. He's holding a jug of rose-scented oil sloshing faintly as he walks. A few bathers perk up like cats hearing a food can open. You wonder if the rose oil will win against the persistent smell of feet and limestone. It probably won't, but points for trying. Nearby, a group of young men argue about the correct way to dry off. One insists on air drying entirely, like some sort of toga-clad sunflower. Another swears by a brisk towel rub, despite the squeaking noises it produces. A third simply shrugs and says, "The gods will dry me." He gets the most nods. The chill has done its job. Your skin is taut, your muscles oddly grateful. You take one last breath, the kind that fills every corner of your chest, and push yourself out of the water. Cold drips run down your spine like tiny tax collectors. You wrap yourself in a cloth that smells like olive oil and cedar. Someone hands you a cup of something herbal. You sip. It tastes like boiled twigs and possibly regret, but it's warm and that's enough. Behind you, the frigidarium hums. Not literally, of course, but you get the sense that if this room could sing, it would do so softly and in Latin, probably off-key, but with feeling. You follow the curve of the corridor once again, your steps slower now. The floor is dry beneath your feet, but the air grows damp ahead. Another turn, another scent. Next up, steam. Steam wraps around you before you even see the next room. It curls into your nose, your ears, the folds of your robe. The air thickens like soup, and walking becomes a kind of waiting. Welcome to the Sudatorium, the Roman sweat room. Less glamorous than it sounds, but arguably more therapeutic, if you enjoy slow cooking your internal organs. The first breath you take is confusing. You expect eucalyptus or mint. Instead, it's something far less spa-like. Burnt olive oil, wet bronze, soot, and a strange hint of something fermented. You can't decide if it's coming from the walls or the people inside. Probably both. You step forward, towel clutched like a security blanket. The floor is hot, almost aggressively so. Romans heated these rooms from beneath, using a hypocaust system that turned the ground into a giant radiator. Clever. Painful. Effective. The walls glisten, not with luxury, but with a thin sheen of centuries-old sweat ghosts. You imagine a line of senators reclining here, half naked and glistening, trying to outlast each other while pretending to care about public policy. Someone coughs deeply in the corner. It sounds like they've brought an entire amphora's worth of phlegm to the party. You're here for the sweat, not the ambiance. Though, let's be honest, the ambiance is doing most of the work. You sit on a stone bench that's just short of scalding and begin to sweat in ways that surprise you. Sweat from places you didn't know had pores. Eyelids? Knees? That one mole on your shoulder? As you adjust, your vision fogs. Literally. The air is so saturated with moisture that even blinking feels like an act of optimism. You squint and spot an older man sitting across from you. He's humming tunelessly and rubbing his legs with a bundle of rosemary sprigs. A strange ritual? Not exactly. Romans believed the oils and aromas helped clear the lungs and purify the skin, or at least covered the smell of other people. The scent intensifies with the heat. Now you catch something else. Resin, perhaps pine or juniper, tossed on the furnace to cleanse the air, or disguise it. Hard to say. You remember what was said in the Apodarium. You don't come here to feel clean. You come here to feel less unclean. A servant walks in, barefoot and unimpressed. He pours cold water onto a pile of hot stones near the corner. The hiss is immediate and furious. A new wave of heat rushes past your face, stealing breath and thought alike. You lean back, submitting. Historians still argue over what precisely the sudatorium was used for, whether it was more medical than social, whether women had access, whether the sweat had some mystical property. What is clear is that Roman physicians, including Galen, believed sweating out toxins was as noble as any surgical procedure. Galen would have loved your pores right now. You look down. Your legs are dripping like poorly maintained aqueducts. Your arms gleam like bronze statues. There's a strange satisfaction in being slowly poached. In the corner, a man with cheeks like wine jugs starts telling a story. It's loud, animated, and almost certainly false. Something about a runaway chariot, a goose, and a bet gone wrong. You catch only pieces through the steam, but the others laugh in a way that suggests this is a favorite tale, the kind that only improves when half the audience is semi-conscious from heat. You lean your head back against the wall, surprised to find it warm and comforting. The stone exhales heat into your scalp. For a moment, you drift. Not asleep exactly, but in that floaty zone where history becomes more of a whisper than a lesson. You imagine a Roman general sweating beside you, arms crossed, pretending he doesn't enjoy the rosemary. The smell has evolved again. Now it's deeper, muskier. The sweat of ambition, perhaps. Or cooked sandalwood and ambition. A wave of dizziness threatens, but you embrace it like a clumsy dance partner. This is the point. To sweat until you forget what stress feels like, until the world reduces to three things: breath, heat, and the faint aroma of someone's armpit 3 seats over. Someone gets up too fast and nearly slips. Their feet make a tragic squelch. A hand reaches out, steadies them. No words are exchanged, just a nod. There's camaraderie here, forged in the communal decision to boil together in public. You blink again and notice new arrivals entering with the reverence of people walking into a temple or a really well-rated sauna on Yelp. They carry oils in tiny bottles and long-handled scrapers made of bone or bronze, strigils. One man has a tiny pouch tied around his wrist with beeswax and myrrh inside. He dabs it on his neck like perfume. Bold move. The steam thickens. Time gets slippery. You're not sure how long you've been sitting here. Hours? A blink? Does it matter? You reach for your own bottle of oil, one someone handed you earlier without instructions, and mimic the motions around you. A dab here, a smear there. It smells of lavender and goat. You decide not to think too hard about it. There's a reason the sudarium comes after the frigidarium. It's a rebalance. First the shock, then the melt. Roman life was full of contrasts like this. Cold followed by heat. Chaos followed by ritual. Battle followed by bath. As your thoughts slow, your limbs melt further into the stone. You've become part of the bathhouse now, a silent, glistening spectator. No one speaks anymore. There's just the rhythm of water dripping, breath hissing, and skin sighing. Eventually, the servant returns and gestures with a tilt of the head. Your time here is up. You rise, every joint reluctant but slightly improved. Your robe clings to you like wet parchment. You wring it out, earning a grunt of approval from a stranger. A compliment, probably. As you leave the steam behind, the air thins. You smell smoke now, not fire, not danger, just the next stop on your very damp journey. You follow the scent of smoke through a low archway, each step peeling you away from the fog of the sweat room. The air dries a little, the heat lessens, but only slightly. Now you've entered the laconicum, the dry heat chamber. And if the sudatorium was a thick stew, this is the dehydrated snack version. Still spicy, still confusing. The first thing you notice is the sound, or rather, the lack of it. No laughter here, no storytelling. Just a low, constant crackle from a brazier in the center of the room, and the occasional creak of joints being stretched farther than intended. This is not a place for socializing. This is a place for suffering politely. You find a stone bench that looks like it hasn't been sat on in a few centuries, and lower yourself onto it with caution. The seat is radiating a kind of dry fury. Your backside registers its discontent immediately. It's not painful exactly, more like sitting on the emotional memory of fire. The walls around you are brick, smooth and curved, forming a perfect dome overhead. It feels oddly sacred, like a sweat lodge designed by a particularly grumpy engineer. You run your fingers along the mortar, rough and ancient, and wonder how many generations of bathers have cursed the exact same hot spots. Across from you, an elderly man begins a series of slow, deliberate stretches, bones popping like an old house settling. His only clothing is a damp strip of linen and the confidence of someone who absolutely does not care what you think. Admirable. Your own limbs feel sluggish. Every motion leaves a trail of warm air. You shift position to avoid becoming part of the bench forever. The smell here is different. Charcoal, dried citrus peels, and something medicinal. Possibly mint, but also possibly mold. Hard to say in this lighting. There's a brazier in the center of the room filled with glowing coals and bundles of herbs that sizzle gently. Someone has tossed in a handful of laurel leaves, and the scent creeps toward you like a slow fog. The Romans believed that different herbs had different effects on the body. Mint for focus, bay leaves for clarity, rosemary for memory. Whether or not any of that works, it does smell a bit like the world's oldest cocktail bar. You lie back and let the heat press into your skin like a weighted blanket made of dust. The room encourages introspection or hallucination. Either one is a valid bathhouse experience. Historians still argue over whether the laconicum was a luxury or a medical necessity. Some Roman writers described it as a crucial step in maintaining health. Others avoided it entirely. Perhaps they just didn't like being roasted alive. You look around and realize most people are doing nothing. Not in a lazy way, but in a deeply committed, almost philosophical way. Just sitting, eyes half-lidded, breathing as if each inhale is a tiny poem. You decide to try it. One slow breath in. One even slower breath out. The air feels like you're inhaling a sunbeam. Then comes a sudden shift, a gust of air from a hidden vent. Someone's opened a chamber somewhere nearby. A Roman bathhouse was full of these invisible circulations. Flues, vents, fire pits beneath the floors, all part of the hypocast system that powered everything. It's like standing on top of a massive, grumpy dragon that never quite wakes up. You're sweating again, but it's different now. Less like you're melting, more like you're distilling. You feel concentrated, like an essence. You wonder if this is what wine feels like before it gets bottled. In the corner, a woman is fanning herself with a leaf that looks suspiciously like it came from a toga. She catches your eye and smirks. "Too much?" she mouths. You nod. She fans harder. A servant walks in silently and places a bowl of crushed snow on a nearby pedestal. It steams softly as it melts. Romans, being the dramatic creatures they were, sometimes sent ice from the Alps just to cool these rooms down, which feels extravagant until you realize you would give up several modern conveniences for that bowl of snow right now. Your skin starts to tingle, that itchy edge of overexposure. Time to move on. As you stand, your robe sticks in an unpleasantly specific way. You peel it off your back like a piece of bread from a hot pan. Your hair, if you have any left unsoaked, is now sculpted into something between windswept senator and boiled helmet. You exit through a smaller door this time, one used mostly by those who've lasted the full heat cycle. It feels like a reward. The hallway beyond is cooler, dimly lit, and smells unexpectedly good. Frankincense, honey, and some kind of wax. You follow it like a trail, and then, just like that, you arrive at the oil room. Not a bath, not yet. First, you get scrubbed down like a particularly fancy piece of furniture. You barely have time to adjust to the cooler air before someone hands you a bronze object shaped like a curved spatula. It's called a strigil, and it's going to do things to your body that you may or may not be emotionally ready for. The room is long and low lit, the stone walls coated with a soft golden hue from oil lamps hanging in small niches. The scent is astonishing. Olive oil, of course, but also cinnamon, myrrh, and something distinctly like freshly cracked pepper. There's an herbal richness to the air that makes your shoulders drop an inch just by breathing. This is the unctorium, the oiling room. You're not going to be cleaned with water here, not yet. You're going to be cleaned with fat. A young servant steps forward. He doesn't speak, just gestures for you to sit on a low stool. You obey, because that seems like the safest course of action when someone's holding a jar of slippery substance and a blade-shaped tool. He begins by rubbing warmed oil over your shoulders, neck, and back with practiced movements. It's not sensual. It's not sterile either. It's more like someone tenderly trying to turn you into a salad. The oil is thick, fragrant, and slightly gritty with fine ash or powdered herbs. You feel every bump, every uneven patch of skin. It's both relaxing and a little too honest. After a few moments, the strigil comes into play. The servant drags it across your skin with firm, confident strokes, scraping off the oil along with sweat, dead skin, and any remaining pride you had. It leaves your body feeling strangely new, like you've just been peeled, but in a good way. This was standard practice for Roman bathers. Washing with soap wasn't really a thing yet. Instead, they believed in scraping themselves clean. It was equal parts exfoliation and exfoli ritual. The gunk removed from this process, the combination of oil, dirt, and skin flakes, was sometimes collected as a kind of medicinal paste. Think about that next time you complain about modern skincare trends. You glance around the room. Others are undergoing the same ritual, some with personal slaves or friends assisting, some doing it themselves in slow, meditative movements. There's a rhythm to it. Oil, scrape. Oil, scrape. Occasionally, a grunt of surprise or a sneeze from someone getting a little too enthusiastic with the pepper-infused oil. One older man sneezes 3 times in a row and then laughs so hard he drops his strigil. He waves it in the air and announces something vaguely obscene about Jupiter's nostrils, which earns him a round of chuckles from the room. You decide that, whatever he said, you probably agree. Historians still debate just how often Romans actually bathed like this. Some sources suggest daily visits were common for men of leisure, while others argue that it was a weekly indulgence for most. It likely varied by class, region, and whether or not your local bathhouse had suffered an awkward plumbing-related fire that week. What's certain is that oil was central to Roman cleanliness. And not just for health or beauty, status was oiled into the process. The type of oil you used, its scent, who applied it, all spoke volumes about your rank, wealth, and preferences. You're now being offered a small bowl of perfume to dab on your neck and wrists. You hesitate. The scent is intense, resinous, almost like burnt sugar and wet leaves. It's definitely not subtle. But then again, neither are you, slick and glistening like a festive rotisserie chicken. You apply it. Another servant appears, this one with a clean linen wrap and a tray of snacks. You stare at the tray in confusion. Apparently, oiling is hungry work. There are figs, cheese, and a strange cake that smells like fennel and disappointment. You nibble a fig. It is aggressively average. Now comes the part you didn't expect: conversation. This room, like the others, doubles as a social space. It's where business deals happen, gossip is exchanged, and people subtly judge each other's calves. Two men near the corner are deep in discussion about land ownership. Another pair is arguing gently about which amphorae to use for aging garum. You're just trying to not drop your fig on your freshly oiled thigh. As you stand, your feet stick slightly to the mosaic floor, which has warmed from all the bodies moving over it. You're ushered toward the next chamber, the actual bath. But before that, a final rinse. You're led past a narrow doorway, and there it is, a marble basin filled with cool water and flower petals. Not for soaking, just for splashing and rinsing off the last remnants of oil. You dunk your hands and face. The cold hits you like clarity. The petals swirl. You wonder whose job it is to refill the petal bowl and how many existential crises they've had today. Refreshed, slick, and smelling like a spice market during a thunderstorm, you move into the heart of the experience, the actual bath. As you cross the threshold into the caldarium, the hot water chamber, the world seems to sigh open before you. A massive steaming pool shimmers beneath a vaulted ceiling painted to resemble the sky. You inhale. The scent is unmistakable now. This is what Roman bathhouses really smelled like. The heat hits you like a velvet hammer. It's not just warm, it's the kind of deep, enveloping steam that makes your bones feel like they're melting into your joints. You take one cautious step onto the marble floor of the caldarium and immediately regret not bringing sandals. It's slick, and the heat rises from the ground itself, thanks to the hypocaust system beneath your feet, a clever Roman invention that channels hot air under the floors and through hollow walls. You are, quite literally, walking on engineered fire. The air smells stronger in here, earthier, a rich blend of wet limestone, body oil, cypress resin, and the faint metallic whisper of bronze fittings and sweat-soaked tile grout. If you had to describe it, you'd say it smells like a forest that's been politely sweating for a few centuries. There's a large pool in the center, shrouded in steam, the surface barely disturbed. Men lounge in it, some up to their chins, others just dipping their feet and murmuring quietly. You slide in, and the water wraps around you like a heavy robe. It's glorious, and a little too hot. Your skin tingles. Your brain threatens to shut down in protest, or perhaps in awe. You glance across the room. An older man is dozing upright in the corner, snoring like a minor volcano. Another younger man is staring dreamily at a crack in the ceiling, possibly trying to solve a philosophical riddle or wondering if that's mold. As you adjust, a slave walks by with a bronze ladle, splashing warm water on a slab of stone near the wall, creating an impromptu sauna effect. The hiss of steam is soothing. You let your head fall back, eyes closed. For a moment, you forget the outside world exists. You could be anywhere or nowhere. A pleasantly slippery limbo of Roman humidity. Then someone starts singing. Softly, badly, but sincerely. It's an old tune, something about wine, harvest, and possibly getting rejected by a goat herder, though your Latin's rusty. The others don't react. This is normal. People sing here, people argue here, people debate the best place to get fermented fish sauce here. The coldarium wasn't just for soaking, it was for lingering. Your pores are opening like cautious flowers. You begin to feel light, untethered. The heat dissolves time. A small, slightly absurd fountain in the shape of a cherub peeing cheerfully into a basin trickles somewhere behind you. It's the only sound aside from the breathing and the distant creak of wood as someone shifts on a bench. That and the unmistakable gurgle of your own stomach protesting all the figs. Historians often argue about how long people spent in these baths. Some claim it was an entire afternoon ordeal, a structured ritual of sweating, scraping, soaking, gossiping, and occasionally wrestling a friend named Gaius in the nude for no clear reason. Others suggest that for many, it was just a quick dip and out, especially if you were low on coin or trying to avoid your cousin who still owed you a goat. And yet, here you are, in a space that radiates the casual luxury of wasted time done properly. It's not about cleansing, it's about unclenching. A man sits beside you without asking. He offers a single nod and then immediately begins discussing his neighbor's failed attempt to build a garden fountain using stolen aqueduct water. You listen, or pretend to. It's hard to focus when your spine is slowly liquefying. He segues into a long-winded story about his pet goose and its unfortunate incident with a magistrate's sandal. You smile politely and nod, trying not to fall asleep mid-goose anecdote. Eventually, he paddles away, and you're left with your thoughts. You begin to wonder what people 2,000 years from now will think about your daily rituals. Will they lie in virtual steam rooms imagining what your apartment smelled like after taco night? Will they giggle at your exfoliating loofah made from synthetic ocean sponge? You start to doze, but then someone splashes in beside you, too enthusiastically, and you're reminded you are still in a room with 20 other strangers, each radiating their own personal cloud of steam and existential angst. You decide it's time to move on. You peel yourself from the water and step out, skin pink, limbs heavy, like a well-simmered dumpling. You're directed toward the next phase, the tepidarium, the warm room, a transition space, neither hot nor cold, just comfortably indifferent. On your way there, you pass a niche in the wall with small pots. They're filled with herbal concoctions, likely left for aromatherapy or perhaps religious offerings. You lean in. One smells like lavender, another like regret mixed with time. You keep walking. The tepidarium welcomes you like a cozy sigh. The heat here is ambient, gentle. The light is softer, coming through translucent stone windows made of thin alabaster. You can see shapes beyond them, figures moving, birds flying. The world is still out there, but just barely. You lie on a low stone bench, body still steaming from the bath. A servant gently places a folded cloth behind your neck. You thank them. They nod. A man across the room sneezes, apologizes to no one in particular, and then falls asleep again. You do the same. This is the part of the bathhouse where the world fades. Not gone, just irrelevant. You don't have to worry about your toga, or politics, or whether that fig was poisoned. You're just here. And you smell like olive oil, roses, dust, and something uniquely Roman. You wake up to the sound of trickling water, not the urgent kind, more like a lazy fountain somewhere close, rhythmically dropping coins of sound into a stone basin. You're still in the tepidarium, and for a few blissful seconds, you don't remember who you are, where you came from, or whether you ever had taxes due. That's the magic of a Roman bathhouse. It strips you of all that identity baggage and replaces it with the gentle scent of warm dust and rosemary-infused sweat. You stretch. Everything cracks softly like an old wax tablet being opened. Then you sit up and catch a whiff of something odd. You know how ancient spaces always seem to smell faintly of time itself? This is more specific. There's a faint sourness, like fermented barley left in the sun too long. Mixed with that, a sweet whiff of honeyed wine, the kind that sticks to your upper lip and never lets go. And underneath it all, a barely there trace of something roasted, not meat, not grain, something suspiciously like toasted pigeon. That's when you remember, this bathhouse also has a snack bar. It's not exactly a modern cafe. There's no chalkboard menu or awkward barista mispronouncing your name. But there's a corner room, half kitchen, half meeting place, where light meals are served between soaks. You shuffle toward it, drawn by instinct and mild hunger. Inside, there's a marble counter stained from centuries of use. A few men are sipping from ceramic cups, gossiping about gladiator retirements and whether the governor's new statue looks a little too Greek. You get handed a small cup of mulsum, wine mixed with honey, and a fig stuffed with some kind of soft cheese. It's delicious and also vaguely unsettling, as if it shouldn't be this good in a room that smells like lukewarm sandalwood and ambition. You take a seat near a lattice window, letting the breeze fan your face. Through the open slats, you catch a glimpse of the outside courtyard. A fig tree sways gently. A pair of boys chase a dog. A toga flaps on a clothesline, looking bored. Someone next to you is loudly explaining the concept of balance of humors to a man who clearly stopped listening 3 sentences ago. You learn that if you have too much black bile, you might become melancholy. If you have too much yellow bile, you're probably angry, or possibly just hate figs. The science is loose, and yet people believe in it. Just like they believe that bathing in a specific order, tepidarium, caldarium, frigidarium, can align the soul. You nod along. Your soul does feel slightly more aligned, and possibly lemon-scented. A historical footnote here, scholars still debate whether Roman food served in bathhouses was always hot or more often cold and pre-prepared. Some say there were elaborate kitchens on site. Others argue for simpler fare, bread, olives, nuts. But one thing is certain. Romans were snackers, constant snackers. You could be halfway through a political debate and still stop for a pickled radish. You sip the last of your wine, feeling the gentle tug of the next phase, the frigidarium. This is the cold room. Not emotionally cold, though no one really chats much in there. It's literally freezing by Roman standards, and you're expected to go in completely soaked from the previous stages. It's the ritual. Hot, warm, cold. Melt the body, then shock it back into existence. As you re-enter the main corridor, the scent of the cold room hits you before the temperature does. It smells like wet marble, faded mint, and that sharp mineral tang of icy spring water. There's something deeply bracing about it. It's the scent of waking up, whether you want to or not. You step inside. Instant regret. The air is 10 degrees colder, maybe more. The light is harsh, filtered through bright alabaster. The pool is still, pale blue, and frighteningly quiet. No laughter here, just gasps. Tiny, controlled gasps from people dunking themselves in water that seems purpose-built to slap you awake. You take the plunge. It feels like being hugged by an angry ghost. Your breath catches, your eyes water, your skin erupts in goosebumps, and your limbs twitch like startled fish. And then, clarity. Perfect, unsettling clarity. The kind that makes you remember your childhood address and the exact date of Caesar's death at the same time. You surface, blinking. Everything is crisp. Your thoughts, your senses, even the taste of that fig comes back to you, sharper now, more defined. You realize that somehow this freezing ritual makes you feel more alive than all the luxury of the steam rooms and oil massages combined. Around you, others brave the water with similar expressions of determination and regret. A woman nearby mutters something about her husband and a fishmonger. A man climbs out, shivering, laughing hysterically. You wonder if this is the Roman equivalent of a cold plunge TikTok. Once you emerge and dry off with a scrap of linen that's been warmed by the tepidarium's heat, you're given a final treat, a dab of perfume. Just a touch behind the ears. It smells like myrrh, cloves, and mystery. You smell expensive and mildly ridiculous, but in a good way. And just like that, your bathhouse journey is nearly done. You linger in the atrium for a while, watching others arrive, begin their process. Some look nervous, others bored, a few excited. It's a cycle, a sacred soapy cycle. And all around, the place continues to breathe. Water drips, oil warms, people laugh. Somewhere, a boy drops a jar, and someone yells something about Neptune's clumsy cousin. You sit. You sip the last of your drink. You smell like Rome. You're not entirely sure how long you've been here. Time has a way of slowing down inside the bathhouse, dissolving like salt in warm water. You lean back against a cool marble bench, still tingling from the frigidarium. Your limbs feel pleasantly detached, like someone has borrowed your skeleton and replaced it with slightly overcooked noodles. Honestly, not a bad sensation. Now that you've rinsed, soaked, sweated, frozen, and dined, there's one last stage to explore before you call it a day. The dressing room, or in proper Roman terms, the apoditarium. You shuffle your way back down a hallway, past the statue of a man with a very confident posture and absolutely no pants. The scent here shifts again. Oil residue, old linen, leather sandals, and, unmistakably, the sharp tang of ammonia. Which, if you're wondering, probably comes from the communal use of urine-based cleaning products. Yup, Romans washed things, including clothes, with fermented urine. That wasn't an insult. That was a line item on the laundry bill. As you enter the apoditarium, you're met with a flurry of activity. Robes are flying, sandals are being wrestled onto feet. Somewhere, a man is arguing with a slave about the location of his favorite hairpin. It's chaos, but in a relaxed, everyone's mostly clean now sort of way. You find your cubby, a recessed niche in the stone wall where your belongings have been stashed. A slave boy stands nearby, clearly tasked with watching over the valuables. You give him a nod of thanks. He's been here the whole time. So have several others, quietly keeping order while the wealthy patrons parade through their purification rituals. It's worth pausing here to mention just how deeply class was baked into every inch of Roman life, bathhouses included. There were separate sections, hours, even water temperatures sometimes, depending on your social status. Some thermae were open to all free men, others required a fee. Slaves often bathed only at certain times, or not at all. And women, they had their own complicated rules, sometimes separate facilities, sometimes alternate hours, and sometimes not welcomed at all. Historians still debate whether mixed bathing was common or scandalous, or perhaps both, depending on the century. But in this moment, the dressing room is an equalizer. Everyone is putting on tunics. Everyone smells vaguely of pine sap and sweat. You pick up your garments, still slightly damp from before, and begin the delicate process of redraping them in something that vaguely resembles fashion. As you adjust the folds of your tunic, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a bronze mirror. It's a little warped, but there you are, flushed, glowing, a bit dazed. You look like someone who's been to the bathhouse. Someone who knows things now, like what old olive oil smells like when mixed with human skin, like how to step over heated marble floors without doing a ridiculous little tiptoe dance. You reattach your belt, fix your sandals, and feel almost whole again. And then, one last thing, the hair scrape. Technically, this was supposed to happen earlier, but timing is flexible here. You sit on a low stool, and a bathhouse attendant approaches with a small bronze instrument that looks like a very fancy butter knife. This is the strigil, and its job is to scrape the remaining oil, sweat, and grime off your body like icing from a cake. It's both deeply satisfying and mildly alarming. You flinch the first time, then settle in. The strigil slides down your arm with a rasping sound, leaving behind a trail of surprisingly clean skin. You think about all the people who've undergone this exact ritual: senators, merchants, poets, assassins, even emperors probably. Maybe even Caligula, though he probably made it weird. There's a soft clink as the grime is wiped onto a cloth. The process continues, down your back, your legs, the backs of your knees. You try not to think too hard about the communal cloth. Nearby, a man is loudly discussing which fish sauce pairs best with stuffed dormice. You've heard this argument before. It's the Roman equivalent of a heated debate over barbecue styles. His opponent insists that garum from Hispania is too salty, while a third man mutters that real connoisseurs ferment their own. You vow to avoid dinner invitations from all of them. As the scraping ends, you're dusted lightly with a powder that smells like lavender and crushed laurel leaves. You inhale deeply. Your body is clean, your skin is glowing, and your brain feels just mushy enough to forget whatever civic duties you had this morning. You step back into the atrium one last time. Sunlight filters through high clerestory windows, casting geometric shadows across the floor. A pair of musicians pluck at a lyre and a flute, adding a dreamy hum to the air. A child giggles, chasing a feather that dances on the breeze. Somewhere behind you, someone drops a soap dish with the delicate clang of terracotta tragedy. You feel a sense of ending, of completion, like you've passed through a ritual and emerged reborn. Not dramatically, not mythically, just clean, in every possible sense. The bathhouse isn't just a place. It's an experience, a system, a performance. A cleansing of body, yes, but also of routine, of weight, of the sticky complications of daily life. And now, with your tunic straight, your hair glistening, and your nostrils full of mystery herbs, you step out into the Roman street. It smells like donkey carts, grilled onions, and potential. You're back outside now, blinking under a sun that feels brighter than you remember. There's a sharp shift from the dense humidity of the caldarium to the dry, dusty breeze of the Roman street. You take a moment to steady yourself. It's like stepping from one world into another. Your skin is still warm, your pores still open, and your mind? Well, your mind is somewhere between total serenity and mild existential confusion. A perfect state for wandering. You're not heading home just yet. No, you follow the crowd down a side road, where the smell of the bathhouse gives way to something new. Freshly baked bread, spiced wine, and the unmistakable funk of goat hooves on cobblestones. Welcome to the post-bath ritual. Lounging, snacking, and low-stakes socializing. You duck into a small taberna, the kind that serves 3 things badly and 1 thing brilliantly. The air inside is hazy with smoke, conversation, and a hint of oregano. You squeeze into a stone bench and glance around at the other patrons. Some still towel-draped from the baths, others already halfway through their second cup of mulled wine. A boy with ink-stained fingers is reciting verses from memory for coins. Someone throws him a fig. Someone else laughs so hard at a joke about senators and sea urchins that they merely choke on their lentils. A small dog is asleep in a clay pot. No one seems to know why. You order something, doesn't really matter what, and it arrives quickly, all steam and garlic and olive oil. It tastes like comfort. You eat slowly, letting each bite stretch out across the soft edges of your senses. You're not in a hurry. No one here is. This is part of the whole experience, really. Roman bathhouses weren't just about getting clean. They were about reordering the day, flipping the script. You emerged not just scrubbed, but slightly reprogrammed, rescented, rebalanced. You watch as 2 older men begin a slow-motion game of dice at the next table. They argue over the rules. They always argue over the rules. Historians still debate what exactly those rules were, which adds to the suspicion that the rules were made up on the spot, depending on the level of wine consumed. One of the men pauses to rub oil into his elbow. Another gestures with a bread crust, launching crumbs across the table like confetti. You sip from a clay cup and think about how strange it is that you smell like roses, pine sap, and a bit of charcoal, while the street outside smells like donkey farts and ambition. Still, there's something poetic about it. You step back outside just as a parade of school children passes by, chanting irregular Latin verbs. Their teacher, a woman with the patience of 10,000 saints, marches beside them holding a scroll like it's both a weapon and a lifeline. You nod at her. She nods back, exhausted. Turning a corner, you pass a vendor selling amulets carved from bone. Another stall is offering something that looks suspiciously like beetle-based eyeliner. You consider it for a second, then remember you just spent an hour getting ungreasy. Maybe next time. You pause at a fountain and splash a little water on your hands. Habit, really, even though you're already clean. The water glitters in the afternoon light, catching in the fine hairs on your forearm. You think back to that moment in the tapeterium, when the heat swelled around you like a velvet curtain, when everything slowed, when you stopped being a functioning Roman citizen and started being, essentially, a very clean vegetable. You miss that feeling a little. A friend spots you and waves from across the street. You nod back. There's no obligation to stop and chat, just acknowledgement that you've both done the thing. The Roman thing. You've bathed, you've eaten, you've escaped the grime of empire for a while. You pass by a small alley where a cat is licking something that might once have been part of a fish. The alley smells exactly how you'd expect. Brine, urine, and ancient disappointment. You speed up. And there it is again, the scent of the bathhouse, still clinging to your hair, your skin, your tunic. A faint floral smokiness, undercut with musk and mystery. It's like a ghost of eucalyptus and thyme. You wonder how long it'll linger. A few hours? A day? Long enough for someone to say, "Hey, you smell like someone who has their life together." Which, in this moment, you do. You decide to walk a bit further, down to the river. The breeze is stronger here, tugging at your sleeves, playing with the hem of your tunic. Children are skipping stones. Two lovers are definitely arguing about philosophy, and a merchant is loudly claiming he invented wine. He probably didn't. Still, you sit for a while, letting the sun do what it does best, soothe without asking questions. And now, as the city exhales around you, you realize something subtle has shifted. It's not just that your body is cleaner, it's that your mind is unknotted. You remember who you are, where you are, and that, despite the politics, the gladiators, the questionable hygiene practices, and the tax collectors with suspicious mustaches, this moment is yours. You close your eyes, and for a few breaths, it's like you're back in the warm chamber. The air thick, the scent of oil and heat, the hush between splashes. You carry it with you now, a clean slate wrapped in linen, walking under Roman skies. You're still by the river when you realize it's time to head home. Not because anyone told you, not because of some schedule, you just feel it, like your body's internal sundial has clicked softly into place. You stretch once, twice, and rise with a small groan that tells you your joints aren't quite as youthful as your toga tries to claim. The walk back is slower, gentler. You're in no rush. You trace your steps through narrow side streets, past walls scrawled with messages in fading red pigment. Some of them advertisements for gladiator matches, others declarations of love, or crude doodles of body parts that haven't changed since the dawn of public restrooms. You can't help but smirk. Ancient graffiti, humanity's eternal voice. As you walk, the smell of the baths still lingers. Less now, it's merging with the ambient scent of the city. Baking tiles, manure, roasted chickpeas, and whatever your neighbor is burning on his stove that should absolutely not be burning. But underneath it all is that floral whisper of the oils rubbed into your skin, mixed with traces of smoke and citrus. You carry the memory of the heat, the steam, the soft hush of voices echoing through stone. You pass the public latrines. Yup, still an experience best avoided. There's a queue of citizens balancing dignity and desperation, and you nod in solidarity as you give them a wide berth. Roman plumbing is impressive in theory. In practice, it's a learning curve. Turning the corner, you're momentarily distracted by a woman yelling at her goat. It's unclear whether the goat is guilty of theft, adultery, or both. Either way, the goat looks unrepentant. You sidestep a runaway olive rolling across the path and glance up at the windows above, those little rooftop gardens where someone's always growing too much basil or airing out bed sheets in full view of the world. A small child leans over a balcony and announces to the street, "I saw a man with 3 ears." Someone yells back, It was probably just bad lighting. You're reminded in a surprisingly soothing way that Rome is equal parts chaos and routine. At your front door, you take a breath before stepping inside. The air is cooler here, shaded, quieter. The walls insulate you from the chatter outside, though a neighbor is definitely attempting to play a double-reeded flute again. It's a sound. You change out of your bathhouse tunic, now pleasantly rumpled and scented with everything from crushed laurel to someone else's sandalwood preference. You fold it loosely, not bothering with precision. You're not in a toga folding mood. Then, with a kind of grace that only comes after hours of being semi-boiled and re-oiled, you settle onto your couch. It's a modest one, some woven wool, a cushion stuffed with feathers you're not entirely sure are from the advertised bird, but it welcomes you like an old friend. You lie back, stretch your toes, and exhale the kind of exhale that makes the universe pause. That's when it hits you. You've become the scent. It's not the bathhouse anymore, it's you. You're the bouquet, the incense, the afterglow. You waft like a philosophical candle. You close your eyes. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember a story told at the Frigidarium, something about Emperor Caracalla and his obsession with rose oil. They said he traveled with casks of it, that he once delayed a military campaign because his massage oils hadn't arrived. Historians still debate whether that's fact or juicy posthumous gossip, but either way, you respect the commitment. You reach for a scroll to read, but your hand stops halfway. Do you really want to break the spell? Instead, you listen to the distant rustle of leaves outside the window, to the soft hum of evening, to the muffled shout of someone who's either singing or just very passionate about bread. You let your hand fall. A cat has wandered into your home somehow and curls up at your feet without asking permission. You both ignore the intrusion. Mutual understanding is immediate. It's peaceful now, still, but not in a sterile, empty kind of way. It's a full stillness, like after a dinner with friends, or finishing a long book, or waking up from a nap where you dreamed about napping. You wonder how many others are experiencing this same post-bath calm. A senator across town? A baker 2 streets down? That one guy who tried to sell you a love amulet made of snail shells? Maybe even him. You feel a connection, not to empire or conquest or destiny, but to the soft, shared humanity of having been gently steamed, scrubbed, and restored. It's a very specific kind of contentment, one that's hard to describe and harder to replicate. A Roman bathhouse kind. Not flashy, not loud, just fragrant and fleeting. You curl slightly on your side, let your body sink into the folds of the couch, and let your eyelids drift lower. Outside, the city murmurs. Inside, you are warm, weightless, and very clean. You're not sure how much time passes, maybe minutes, maybe an hour, but eventually your eyes flutter open again, just a crack, just enough to register the amber hue of evening sinking over Rome, that golden hour when everything turns a shade warmer, softer, as if the entire empire has been dipped in honey. You sit up slowly, not out of urgency, but reverence. You feel like a candle that's been burning low for hours, now barely flickering. The scent on your skin has mellowed, less assertive now, more personal. The olive oil has settled in, merging with your own warmth. It's oddly comforting, like your body remembers every step of the bathhouse experience and is still humming in harmony with it. You wander toward your window, nudging it open. A faint breeze drifts in, carrying notes of city life, A neighbor's cooking, someone laughing, the distant clang of metalwork. Somewhere, a dog barks. Not a threatening bark, just a, "Hey, I'm here" kind of bark. The city continues without you, and yet you're part of it. As you lean against the frame, a new thought surfaces. What did really smell like in Roman bathhouses? Not just the oils and incense, but the whole thing. You rewind the day. First, the entrance, a blend of damp wool, sweaty sandals, and optimism. The faint tang of bronze coins passed from hand to hand. Then the apoditarium, thick with the mingled sense of unwashed tunics, wet wood benches, and excitement. Next, the tepidarium, steam rising like mist from the tiles, the comforting embrace of heated stone, and the citrus bite of lemon balm oil splashed onto shoulders. The caldarium, a sensory onslaught, sulfur, lavender, mint leaves crushed underfoot, sweat, salt, eucalyptus resin smeared on arms. The near-sweet, almost sour tang of human effort, an aroma you only recognize when you're the one producing it. Then the scraping, the strigil dragging over slick skin, bringing with it layers of dirt, oil, and the pride of a productive day. There's nothing polite about it. It's deeply, thoroughly human. And the final act, the frigidarium. Sharp air, cool marble, goosebumps blooming on contact, a breath that feels like biting into winter. You remember how your skin pulled taut, how the world snapped into clarity for a second. Now, from your quiet apartment, you realize that smell wasn't one singular thing. It was a symphony, a rotating cast of odors, each playing its part. It was movement, transformation, proof that you were alive in the most ancient and oddly communal way. Historians still argue whether the bathhouses were more hygienic sanctuaries or elaborate social stages. You think it's both. Yes, some infections likely spread there, as did rumors and grudges. But so did laughter, so did friendships, so did a kind of mutual surrender to the fact that we all need to be scrubbed clean now and then, body and soul. You glance down at your arm and press your nose against your forearm. Yep, still a hint of time. There's something delightful about that. You move to your small writing table, where a half-used wax tablet sits waiting. You could jot down a few thoughts, or maybe a shopping list. You need more garum. But your fingers hesitate. You know that once you press the stylus into that wax, the spell might break. Instead, you reach for a piece of bread and tear it slowly. Dip it in olive oil, sprinkle a few seeds on top. Each bite is methodical, a small ritual. As the room darkens around you, the shadows stretch their fingers across the floor, over the cushions, over your sandals. The cat from earlier has returned, or maybe it never left, and now it's sleeping next to your ankle, breathing in time with your own rhythm. You begin to yawn, a long, luxurious one. One of those yawns that feels like it starts in your bones and ends somewhere behind your eyes. You've had an entire day condensed into a few hours of hot water and laughter and clay walls and citrus oils. You've been a Roman citizen in full. You've smelled like Rome. And now you're ready to fade into the night.